Welcome to Coffee with Joe for Friday, May 20th, 2011. Joe, good to see you again.
Salud, bro.
Joe, we apparently hit the debt ceiling this week, which was an occasion for Austan Goolsbee to appear on the Colbert Report.
I'm a regular Colbert watcher.
I'm guessing that maybe Goolsbee propagated some ideas about our money system that you would consider myths.
Yes.
And my question to you is, what are the main misunderstandings that he propagated in his appearance on Colbert? And if you had 6 minutes or however much time those guys have, what would you try to tell the American people if you were in Goolsbee's seat right now?
One of the problems always when we're dealing with the money system and having a discussion about the money system is whenever politics enters into it. So unfortunately, Goolsbee saw his role there as trying to kind of shore up the president's position, Pete, and he saw it more of an answer as to how the deficit ought to be more or less divided up. How it ought to be met, how the taxation issues ought to be met, so that we had smaller deficits, so that we had smaller contributions to the national debt, Pete. And it was really just a political statement, Pete. That's kind of how I viewed it. Not really any effort at all. And maybe to give him some deference, he doesn't have a lot of time to try to explain some of the things that really need to be kind of foundation issues, Pete, if I could. Because basically, if you don't start out and say, well, what is the national debt, and why do we have government debts? What functions, those kinds of things, so that you can understand how deficits contribute to debts, how the government issues debts, and those take part, a very, very important part, Pete, in the money system that we have under fractional reserve banking. So in other words, we really couldn't run the money system without the government issuing debts. And then why is there a debt ceiling? Pete, that's really a big question. Well, why is there a debt ceiling that, every once in a while we have to come up against and move it up, those kind of things. And if you don't understand those kind of things, then you can't understand really anything that's going on with the money system. And if you can't understand, what's going on with the money system, you can't understand what's going on with the national economy. And that brings us back to, the functioning of the national economy, which is dysfunctional.
What is it that people don't understand about the money system, Joe, that's so important?
Primarily, let's say, the system itself being based on fractional reserve banking, and that is to say money comes into existence by virtue only of debts being issued by banks, so that if banks don't think that there's a qualified borrower out there, they're not going to make loans. And if they don't make loans, there's not going to be money in existence. So if there's no money in existence, what's going to happen, Pete? That's basically the question. The only answer for anybody, if the economy is going to even stay the same, is for people to take out more debts. Okay? So we have a system.
Joe, fractional reserve banking is drying up, and the solution that we have is quantitative easing. The Fed could create the money if the banks don't want to lend it out.
No, Pete. Really, the Fed's monetary policy doesn't create any money, any real money, Pete. Okay? Well, when we say real money, what do we mean? Okay? I would say M2 is what we really mean, Pete. Okay? Where's the growth? Where's the growth in M1 and M2 as a result of quantitative easing? When the government, or the Fed, I should say, buys up securities, government securities back from mostly institutional holders, Pete. They barely ever buy them from the individuals, So they buy them from institutional holders, which are what? Investment banks and commercial banks. And what do they do with it? Are they making any loans with it? Obviously not. So where's that $600 billion? That's $600 billion, Pete. If you think, I'm just saying the last thing. $600 billion allows $6 trillion in loans, Pete. Where is it?
If it were used as reserves at a rate of 1 to 10, right?
Right, exactly.
So that's where we get the pushing on the string thing.
Pushing on the string. So there's no pushing on the string. In this type of an economy, there's no pushing on the string. Now, Pete, if I could stop right there and bring it back to Goolsbee. Okay, because the only way the government can now meet its payment obligations, and by that I mean its budgetary balance, okay, is if there's growth in the economy. It's the only way, Pete. So that the government has more revenues coming in. But the government cannot have more revenues coming in. Why not? Because the banks aren't making loans, and they're not growing M1 and M2, and they're not growing basically the economy. So we have this concept that what the government does through QE2, or which is really its only direct monetary action, Pete, is provide the monetary base. Now, bases are things that you build on, but it doesn't provide any monetary base. It does not provide any monetary base if there's no building going on. So what is it? It goes out there and it gets speculated. It gets speculated with, if I could, Pete. Okay, goes out there and provides the bankers who are willing to provide some margin for people that want to speculate, and then they'll take that margin and they'll speculate it up. They'll leverage it up and speculate it into the commodities, driving up the prices of commodities, Pete, driving up the price of food, driving up the price of oil, driving up the price of pretty much everything that's traded in a future exchange traded market. And so what do we have? We have commodity-based higher prices. We don't have higher prices that are based on labor costs going up. We don't have prices based on really any other costs going up, except for those that are traded on the exchange futures market. So, Pete, what we have is the opposite of an effective monetary system. And Goolsbee is incapable of seeing that it's broken, that it's the monetary system, it's the money system that's broken. He's just incapable of it. And his job as Council of Economic Advisors is to make something look good for the president. And basically, the jig is up. So now they're going to go out there and argue whether, well, we should extend the Bush tax cuts or not extend the Bush tax cuts. They're running scared. The Democrats and the liberals, if you will, Pete, are running scared from that threat of the Peterson,
austerity thinking. Yeah,
the austerity thinking, and they're running scared from that. They don't really know how to deal with it. Why? Because they don't know how the money system works, Pete, and really. They need some 101 stuff on the money system.
So it's the big question then is not how do you explain it in 5 minutes on the Colbert Report so the American public can understand how maybe it could be different and work better, but the question is how do you explain it to Mr. Obama, Joe? What is the piece that you'd like him to understand?
The basic thing is to do away with that money, Pete, and he needs to understand that within the concept of fractional reserve banking, the debt money system, the very fact that there's risk increasing every time the banks make loans in a bubble, and that when they decrease, they have to by nature of the banking system and the financial system drag us further and further down. And that the only way we can get stability, Pete, in the economy is to get stability in the money system, meaning we have to have a permanent money system that is based on real money, that is based on money that doesn't come into existence and disappear every time there's a loan cycle at the bank. The banks lend out real money. What he needs to do, Pete, is to listen to that new MP3 that's going to be coming up on the website of the Program for Monetary Reform, because I think it really would do a great job for him to be listening to that, Pete.
Well, I think that's a new MP3 that a friend from Sweden sent us. Had a text reader put it in an MP3 form. So, Mr. Obama, if you're listening, stick it on your iPod. The next time you're out jogging, take a listen to the program. We'll see where it goes from there,
Pete.
Joe.
All right, Pete.
And if he has any questions, we will be making ourselves available at about this time next week.
That's right, Pete. Thanks, buddy.
Fight the good fight.